And for tonight's theme, we're going to continue our Back to Basics series with the fourth basic guideline of centering prayer. And after the main meeting, we're going to have a half hour of a new feature called Question Time, where you can ask any questions you have about centering prayer or any of the practices that we do at these meetings, or you can comment on your own practice and we'll see what that evolves into. So don't let me forget, because that's a new feature. You, O God, are my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You lead me down right pathways in your name. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. Welcome to this digital contemplative prayer group. This is a place for all God's people. Whatever your beliefs or doubts, you are welcome here. If you are new to centering prayer, just follow the instructions as the session unfolds. You are also welcome to use the silence in any other way that's right for you. Loving God, we ask for your blessings upon this gathering, recognizing that we bring the joys and sorrows of our lives here today. If anyone would like to mention, silently or aloud, expressions of gratitude or concern for ourselves, our families, our friends, our society, or our fragile planet, please do so now.
Lifting up Barbara to you, Lord. Also, I pray for full relief and mobility for my left foot.
For Patty.
For a special intention.
For all of us in this group.
God, we trust that you hear our prayers, silent or spoken, wordless or in words. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the fourth basic guideline of centering prayer, which invites us to spend a couple of moments at the end of the prayer time with our eyes closed, making a transition from the prayer into daily life. And this is the basic guideline that is most likely to be just ignored or forgotten about. And even people or maybe even especially people who've been practicing for a long time, it's very tempting when your timer goes off to just jump up and rush off into your day, especially if your phone has been ringing and you have a lot to do and you've been fretting about things during the whole prayer time. But if we take this couple of moments to remain with eyes closed at the end of the prayer time, it can really strengthen our practice and help us to bring the fruits of the prayer into our daily life. If you feel ungrounded in your life and unsure if the prayer is affecting your life, then spending the time at the end of the session in order to reconnect your prayer with your ordinary life can really create a wonderful bridge that helps you to be more deeply grounded by the prayer. And so how do you do that? How do you spend the couple of minutes with your eyes closed at the end of the prayer time? I have a bunch of suggestions for you, but I think the most important question is, what is your way to bring the prayer into your daily life? Sometimes you can just spend that time, that couple of minutes at the end of the prayer time, just asking yourself and asking God how you're being led to bring the energy of the prayer, the atmosphere of silence, into your everyday life. You don't even necessarily have to answer the question. You can just ask it and allow it to unfold silently and wordlessly without quite knowing what's happening, and have that be part of your prayer as you transition out of the prayer. But my own teacher, David Frenette, who's the author of The Path of the Centering Prayer, has 5 specific suggestions for how you can use your time at the end of the prayer time. The first is to just rest. You've been letting go of thoughts. Now you can just let go of all effort and just be, without practicing at all, just open to God, resting in God, however that happens for you then. And that can be a helpful diagnostic, because sometimes when you do that, when you just rest completely, you might notice that you've been bringing a lot of unnecessary effort and strain into your prayer, a sense of having to do. And so just resting after the prayer can teach you how effortless the prayer itself can feel, and then you can try to bring that sense of effortlessness and rest into your next session of centering prayer. The second suggestion that David makes is that you just spend the couple of minutes bringing your attention to your sense perceptions and your breath, just coming gently back into the room, noticing the sights and smells and feelings and sounds, and grounding yourself in your sensory experience of where you are. You could spend that time in intercession, offering the centering prayer period you've just spent to a particular person or concern. You could visualize your day, imagining yourself bringing the prayer into your daily life, especially if you have some particular challenge that you're going to be meeting that day. You could imagine yourself just bringing the prayer energy and the prayer intention into that activity, infusing it into your regular life. Or you can just silently say, or say aloud if you're by yourself or with someone who would like to hear it, you could say the Lord's Prayer, the Serenity Prayer, or some other beloved way, some other beloved prayer that will help you transition from silence into life. So what is your way to spend that time? There doesn't have to be one answer. The main thing is just, as the guideline says, just to remain there with eyes closed for a couple of minutes That's the important thing. God can use that time, even if you can't remember any of these suggestions. It's okay. Just remember that it's a time of transition. What's my way to do this? My practice is always in evolution. At the moment, I often sit there in a state of openness, just waiting to see what will float up to the top of my consciousness. I have a sense after the prayer period is over that things have been loosened up and allowed to move around in a new way. And so I just allow my consciousness to float around freely and notice things that I might be called to do, feelings that I might have been pushing away that I need to feel. During the practice itself, I don't think about what's happening, but afterwards is a moment when I can notice if anything new is arising. Was something coming up again and again in my prayer? I can just think in a more conscious way about that after the prayer, or I can just gently touch it with my attention. Or I can ask myself, what is asking for my attention? Is there a task, a person, a feeling? Sometimes images float up, emotions, and I can give them a slightly different kind of prayerful attention than I did during the prayer time itself. Some other times, things that seemed important before fall away, and I'm left with just that sense of resting in God's presence. So it can be an important time of checking in with your intuition, a kind of threshold moment between the formless, wordless state of the prayer itself and moving back into the world of words and action and doing. A moment before the conscious mind completely takes over again, when we're in a very open, fertile state where God can speak to us in a different way. We might be more available to God during that time than we usually are. So I'll lead you out of the prayer today with a few suggestions like that. So now I invite you to prepare yourself for your 20 minutes of centering prayer by taking your posture with your spine straight, letting your body flow out from your spine, and just noticing if there's any tension that you'd like to let go of. You could give it a little wiggle or a shake, or just breathe more deeply into it. And just notice how it feels to be in the room where you are, in the moment where you are, a part of this community of prayer, the feeling of being connected to each other in prayer. And just take a moment to notice, who is God for you right now, whatever that might mean, with a sense of openness and honesty about whatever might appear to you. Allow the aliveness of what comes to you to be there, connecting you to that something other that brings you here to this place. Opening yourself to be in relationship with that otherness in a new way. just as we're going to transition out of the prayer at the end, at the moment we transition into the prayer by opening ourselves, becoming more available and accessible to God in whatever way we understand God, the energy of that, the aliveness of that. Just notice how it feels to open yourself. Perhaps a softening in your heart, a shift in your mind, a softening in your body. What will allow you to be more in readiness to be with God, even if you don't know what that will mean? And if you like, you can silently sound your sacred word, or just touch your sacred breath ever so gently with your attention, just reminding yourself that your sacred symbol is there, a little tool that you can use. And if you find yourself becoming engaged with your thoughts, tangled up in them, distracted by them, you can use your symbol like a little bell calling you back to prayer, just touching it ever so gently with your attention so that it brings you back from your distractions to the state of openness. Loving God, help us to be ready for your call. At the end of the prayer time, remain in silence for a couple of minutes. How is God inviting you to use this time? What is your way to bring the fruits of the prayer back into your daily life? Do you want to just rest, letting go of all effort? You've been letting go of thoughts. Now just let go of everything and just be. And notice how that feels. Is there some kind of effort you're letting go of now that you could also let go of during the prayer period itself? Just rest. Or if you prefer, you can slowly come back into your sense perceptions, opening your eyes and hearing sounds and smelling smells and just feeling yourself in the room, just gently coming back. You can visualize yourself in some daily activity, an ordinary activity or some particular challenge, and feel yourself bringing the energy of the prayer into that activity. You could dedicate the period of prayer you've just spent to a particular person or concern. Or you could silently say to yourself the Lord's Prayer, the Serenity Prayer, a beloved prayer that helps you to make this transition. What is the best way for you to bring the prayer into your life? For our Lectio tonight, I'm going to read Psalm 23, partly because it's the kind of thing you might choose to use to bring yourself out of the prayer. You might say to yourself or read to yourself as you transition out of the prayer. So I'll read it once, and then I'll chant it once, and then I'll read it one more time. Listen with the ear of the heart. You, O God, are my shepherd. I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You lead me down right pathways in your name. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. You, O God, are my shepherd. I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You lead me down right pathways in your name. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. You, O God, are my shepherd. I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You lead me down right pathways in your name. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. I invite you to share a word or phrase that resonated for you.
You are with me.
He revives my soul and guides me along right pathways.
You lead me. Forever.
Let's finish by praying together the night prayer. Lord, it is night. The night is for stillness. Let us be still in the presence of God. It is night after a long day. What has been done has been done. What has not been done has not been done. Let it be. The night is dark. Let our fears of the darkness of the world and of our own lives rest in you. The night is quiet. Let the quietness of your peace enfold us, all dear to us, and all who have no peace. The night heralds the dawn. Let us look expectantly to a new day, new joys, new possibilities. In your name we pray. Amen. So thanks for being here. It's wonderful to see you.
Thanks for leading.
Yeah.
And you're welcome to stay
Thank
to
you.
talk about the practice, and you're welcome to leave if it's time for you to leave.
I enjoyed your voice very much tonight.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Beginning of the session, my tremor is often very bad, but by the end it had settled down, so it was more like chanting in the old days before I had the tremors. So
Yeah.
Now, how are people feeling about the recording? One thing I haven't decided is whether to leave the recording on for this part of our time together. If anyone feels it would inhibit them, I should turn it off. But if you don't feel that way, then I think some people would enjoy having a recording of it. So, is there anyone who would feel uncomfortable with it? And don't be uncomfortable about being uncomfortable. Just raise your hand. Okay, well, let me know if you change your mind, or feel free to email me, or thanks, Sheik, for the thumbs up. So who would like to ask a question about the practice, or make a comment, or anything at all? And there's no such
Thanks,
thing.
everyone. Bye.
Good night, Carol.
Night.
There's no such thing as a stupid question, and there's no such thing as a question that won't be helpful to somebody else too.
How do you know how many minutes to stay in quiet after the prayer?
Well, the guideline says for a couple of minutes, so that's kind of the standard response. But I think your body kind of tells you how long to stay. Sometimes you can't afford to stay more than that, so you jump up and go rushing off. But sometimes it's a pleasure to just be there and allow the prayer to kind of percolate a little bit. So listen to your body, and play, or if it's difficult for you in that time, you could play around with some of those different suggestions of David's and see which one really helps you stay grounded during that time. If it's hard to stay that time, maybe saying a prayer like the Lord's Prayer, the Serenity Prayer, the 23rd Psalm could help you to make that transition.
Lindsay, I have a question. Based on your experience, when you go through a period where you encounter a great deal of distraction in your centering prayer periods, over a period of weeks, it could even be months, right? What have you found the best way to deal with that? I'm sure we all have highs and lows in our centering prayer practice, but I'm thinking in particular when you have a period where you can't seem to break out of that. You always seem to have a monkey mind.
That's a good question. I think the real answer is to let go of the idea of that being a problem, that's you're allowed to be as distracted and uncomfortable and upset as you are, and that's not a problem that you have to fix. And you can just trust that that is somehow God using that time in the way that's right for you. And if a lot of difficult, distracting, or even painful stuff is coming up, that's serving some purpose. The deep trust in the practice helps you to let go of judging whether it was a good period or a bad period, and let go of the idea that there has to be some particular way of doing centering prayer. It's often said, as long as you're sitting there, you're doing it right. As long as you don't get up and leave, you're doing your centering prayer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to say thank you for the question and the assurance. This happens to be quite a lot. Thank you so much.
Happens to me quite a lot, believe me. Sometimes it's hard to even feel like you're doing anything at all. Why is it different from your regular thinking? Why is it a prayer rather than just sitting there? Well, your intention for it to be a prayer makes it a prayer, even if you completely forget to go back to your symbol and are sucked in by distractions. You're still doing the prayer. Thank you, Sheik.
That's very encouraging.
It is.
Hi, Lindsay. I have a question. I am really new to centering prayer and very easily caught up in sounds. Is it okay to wear earplugs during the time, or is that not okay?
Nice to see your face, too. That's a good question. I've never heard that question before. It's quite appropriate question for me here in New York City with my sirens going, and there were quite a lot of weird explosions during our centering prayer session tonight. I don't see anything wrong with wearing some kind of ear covering if that helps you, but I also think there's nothing wrong with just being with the sounds and allowing them to be there and just working with them, just like knowing that it's okay if they pull you away and then you come back again. There's that famous story that Cynthia Bourgeault tells in her book about centering prayer, where a nun says to Father Thomas, "Oh, Father Thomas, I was distracted by 10,000 things during my centering prayer." And he says, "How wonderful, 10,000 opportunities to return to your sacred symbol." And it's often said that every return to our sacred symbol is a prayer. So we have a tendency to think we're supposed to eliminate our thoughts and have this somehow blank, clear mind, which is not really part of our human nature to do that with our minds. It's a natural part of the prayer for the thoughts and distractions to occur. And then every return to our sacred symbol, every letting go of the distraction is a prayer and an act of love and an act of consent to God's presence. So I would say there's nothing wrong with wearing earplugs, but there's nothing wrong with being distracted by the sounds either, and just having that be part of the prayer. Thanks, Charlotte.
I bought a piece of equipment called a Muse. It's like a headband you wear to get biofeedback. I've been trying it for maybe a couple of weeks now. And I was surprised. And when I thought I had a good silent meditation, my brain was working and it was picking up. And it shows you different waves going in, like, different type of waves. And when you are having a good meditation, it's like a bird chirping. So have anybody tried any of these? It's called Muse, M-U-S-E.
I haven't tried that, Paul Jean, but I actually have a certification in biofeedback. So I think that what's happening is, and I'm not sure how this particular device works, but whether, if we're in a state of light relaxation, we're in what's called alpha. And as we get more deeply relaxed and less distracted, we're in what's called theta. And those are different kinds of brain waves. So it sounds to me that what it's doing is it's able to somehow detect that, whatever its mechanism is, and is able to feed back to you what your brainwave state is. If we're out and about and doing our lives, we're in beta. So if we're slightly relaxed and calming down, we're in alpha. And when we're really deeply relaxed, we're in theta. And it sounds like that's what the device is feeding back to you.
Thanks, Paul John.
I used it for, oh, sorry. I used it, Paul John, for maybe a year, and I actually found it helpful. The feedback. Yeah, it was very helpful. And then it broke.
That reminds me of another thing that they say about the prayer, which is that the reason they chose 20 minutes as the kind of minimum time for the prayer is that's how long many people's brains take to settle down. And a lot of people say that it's only in the last minute or two before the timer goes off that they actually really feel they've started to settle down. So some people extend their period of prayer to 30 minutes so then they can get a nice 10-minute period of quieter time towards the end. Thank you, Jane.
Yeah, and Father Menninger told me one time, just show up, as you said. The prayer is just sitting there. As with the muse and so many things, my mind wants to measure. And so I'm grateful for you sharing. It's none of those things. Just sit simply and allow.
Yeah, thank you. That's very well put. Yeah, it's so hard for us to accept that we're enough and that we don't have to judge ourselves and keep constantly improving, that God will be pleased if we just sit there and be with God without trying to make it better or special or
Yeah, I would just add that I've really enjoyed participating in the few times that I have been able to make it, and I just love always the invitation, and it's just yeah, it's just a really lovely time. So thank you for setting the scene for that.
Thank you, Steph. Yeah, and thanks to all the wonderful team who are coming together to make this group go forward. We have quite a lot of people who've come forward to help us keep it going. So I'm really, really grateful for that. It's wonderful and exciting that that's happening.
And the invitation is always open for anyone else who might want to engage or just dunk your toes in, see what it's about. Lindsay and I are all ears and welcoming for your participation if you want. Thank you.
Okay, well, that seems to be the end of our questions. If you have any suggestions for how we might use this time, or if you ever want to send a question in writing or anything, just let me know. And maybe I'll continue to sit here for a minute or two more, and you can leave in silence, and we'll hope to see you again soon.
Good night.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you so much, Lindsay.